Fentanyl. It could be hiding anywhere, including in your house, including in your medicine cabinet, or maybe at a friend's house when you're hanging out, playing games, and get offered a pill. Don't take chances. If a drug didn't come from a pharmacy directly to you, you can find fentanyl using a simple strip you can pick up at your local pharmacy. Don't take it until you test it, because fentanyl can be hiding anywhere. Brought to you by the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Mental Disabilities.
This message comes from Greenlight. Ready to start talking to your kids about financial literacy? Meet Greenlight, the debit card and money app that teaches kids and teens how to earn, save, spend wisely, and invest with your guardrails in place. With Greenlight, you can send money to kids quickly, set up chores, automate allowance, and keep an eye on your kids' spending with real-time notifications. Join millions of parents and kids building healthy financial habits together on Greenlight. Get started risk-free at greenlight.com/audio.
Are you ready to change your life, but don't know how to start? Is your stress and worries keeping you awake at night? Have you been battling grief, anxiety, or depression all alone? Have you lost touch with your own sense of being or spirituality? Soul Free Therapies offers professional and affordable live video streaming counseling and coaching services from the comfort of your own home. Sessions offered in English, Spanish, and Portuguese. Go to our website at www.soul-free.com and book your first session today.
Hey you, podcast listener, this is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. Take the blue pill. You wake up in your bed and go back to listening to mundane podcasts that won't challenge your religious beliefs and your so-called truths about reality, the universe, and consciousness. Take the red pill. Subscribe to the Event Horizon podcast, hosted by Mark Anthony Peterson, and he will show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. Event Horizon takes a walk into the paranormal with a splash of conspiracy. It's the podcast that would be born if David Icke and the X-Files had a baby. Subscribe to the Event Horizon podcast by Mark Anthony Peterson on Spreaker, iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Castbox, Stitcher, or any of your other favorite podcast platforms. Remember, all we are offering is the truth, nothing more.
It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman, and the show is brought to you by emailrevealer.com. You can go to emailrevealer.com and get an autographed copy of my book, How to Become a Successful Private Investigator. Also, too, at emailrevealer.com, we have a locate service, a people search, and a skip tracing search investigation, where we find long-lost relatives, we find old friends, old lovers. And this time of year, right before Thanksgiving, right before Christmas, everybody starts getting sentimental. They want to locate their old long-lost relatives. And even adoption investigations, too. We can reunite people separated through the adoption process. But everybody likes to wait till the last minute. Okay, so don't wait until the night before Thanksgiving to start placing your order. Give us a little time. Okay, don't wait until the night before Christmas, to finding your old, because give us a little time. Give us like a week or two to place these orders at emailrevealer.com and reunite with the long-lost relatives and friends. Okay, we got a returning guest today. And we didn't even have to find him. We know where he is all the time. We didn't even have to look at it. We got Alan Warren, who's a radio host up there in Seattle. I got this in front of me. Yeah, at 10:50 a.m. KKNV.
KKNW.
KNW, because the picture. Okay, here it goes. Alan Warren, KKNW, 11:50 a.m. And he's got a new book. Just came out with The Killing Game. The true story of Rodney Alcala, the game show killer, one of those real characters out there. Anyway, Alan, welcome back to the show.
Oh, thank you. It's always good to be with you.
Yeah, it really is. You're a cool guy. You really are. And I knew as soon as the first time I met you, I knew we were going to hit it off. Tell us about yourself. Who's Alan Warren?
I wished I knew. Just a guy, you know. What do I do? I write books and I talk on the radio, and I have a place up in Canada, and I go down to Seattle for my show, and that's about it.
And what'd you do before you started talking on radio?
Do you know I've always been with radio. I've done little odd jobs. You know, I worked at a department store and worked at Nordstrom for a while, and I went to university quite a bit. And I actually have my master's in music. Originally, that's what I was going for. Thought I was going to be someone famous.
Right. Well, we wound up in radio.
Well, yeah.
Hey, do people ever recognize your voice when you go into the bank and stuff like that? Or you're calling up? One time I called up, I think it was Cox Cable, or I was calling up the electric company, and they recognized my voice. Does that ever happen to you?
Oh, yeah. 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 In the weirdest places, too. You know, the problem is you never know where they know you from, too, right?
Yeah, so it's kind of creepy, right?
Yeah.
People only knew.
Actually, I had two ladies that came to my house because they saw me on a TV program. I was on a paranormal TV program just once, just a filler type thing. And they recognized me, and they actually found my house.
Yeah, they just showed up. They wanted to visit, right?
Yeah, they just wanted to talk. And but that's kind of creepy.
Yeah, it is. And people don't realize because they think they know you. You know, they think they're friends. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was fine. It was just two ladies, and they were pleasant, but it was just, sometimes that's kind of freaky now. With social media now, people can find people a lot easier.
That's the truth. That's the truth. Even if you don't want to be found, if you're trying to hide.
Yeah, and we deal with true crime and weird stuff, so that's can be kind of scary.
Now, on your show, when can we find your show up there in Seattle, in Washington?
Well, right now we're Friday at 4 p.m. And we're picking up some extra days now. I've got to fill in more days now because we're doing really well. We've been pretty popular, so we've added a dream specialist, and we've got a forensic guy, a retired cop that does a forensic segment for people, and and we've got a paranormal girl as well now.
And that's interesting. Have you always done the paranormal stuff?
Oh yeah, it's always been an interest. I think because when I was a kid, I used to listen to radio shows, and they were always spooky, you know, and like the Dark Shadows sort of thing. So I've always been totally interested in it.
Like Art Bell?
Oh yeah, Art Bell I like, and I liked it because he sort of had fun with it when he did it, you know, and he brought a lot of things to the surface. I enjoyed Art Bell. I hate to say it, I don't care for Coast to Coast as much now.
Yeah.
You know, it's not the same. I mean, George Nuri does what he does, and I'm not talking negative. I just I want to get all the emails. Let's just say I liked Art Bell the way he.
Yeah, at that time, back in the 90s, you know, you just get chills in the middle of the night listening to Art Bell. You know, everything was believable. You know, now, and now that we kind of know these people, you know what I mean? These guys are full of it.
Problem.
It kind of spoils the fun. Okay, so Rodney Alcala, the game show, the guy was on the dating game, right?
Yeah, he won too.
Now, my first question is, when he was on the dating game, was he already doing murders then, or it started after?
Oh, no, he was already 10 years into it.
Oh,
he was seasoned by the time he got on there, because he started killing and raping in 1968. He got on the game show in September of 78. So he had a good 10 years behind him.
So what's his story? What's his childhood?
You know, the childhood is I put it as pretty average. He was born in Texas, and he lived there till about 8. I believe, 6, 7, 8, somewhere around there. His mother and dad decided to move back to Mexico. That's where they were from, because grandmother was really sick and dying. So they wanted to spend the last a year with her. So they spent actually 3 years back down in Mexico. And during that time, his father left, so he was just with his mother and siblings.
How old was he when his dad left?
He must have been about 8 or 9 then.
Yeah.
And so his mother decided to move back to L.A. after that. And so it was just her and the kids.
And how many brothers and sisters?
Now, let's see. He had 2 sisters and 2 brothers, I believe. Yeah. He was in the middle of the family. So he wasn't the youngest. He wasn't the oldest.
Were you able to talk to his brothers and sisters or his mom or anybody and family members?
Well, I'll tell you what. The only one that would talk in his family was one of his sisters. His father's passed now. And one of his brothers is passed now. The other sister, I have no idea what happened to her. She went back to Mexico, unable to find her.
So what the sister, the one you found, what did she have to say? Was he a normal kid?
Yeah, they loved him. They thought he was the best. He was very friendly. He was a really good brother. He did, they had nothing negative to say. Even the friends that I talked to from those days, he was real friendly. He was helpful. He was always smiling. He was always joking with people. Just nothing at all. He loved animals. No, there was none of the weird stuff. He didn't start fires. He didn't do anything. He never got in trouble. He seemed like an average kid. And to look at him and see his pictures, he was actually a good-looking kid at the time. He was very smart too. He ended up going to university, and he was working at the LA Times. He studied film in New York U under Roman Polanski.
Wow!
So this is a charming, good-looking, smart man, and everybody liked him. There was no fear of him. He was perfectly trustworthy.
Okay,
So,
what did he do at the LA Times?
he started as a typesetter, and then he started doing research for reporters and for stories. So, he was a good guy.
Okay. And what was he doing underneath the Roman Polanski?
Well, what he did was when he graduated from college in LA, he had a real photography and filming sort of passion, and apparently he was a really good photographer, and he wanted to pursue that further and start making films. And so he applied and got into NYU, and Roman Polanski was giving a university course on filmmaking. And he got in and studied with Polanski on filmmaking, and he was that good that they really thought he had an eye for pictures, an eye for detail, and God, it just went from there. So he got in, and this is a lot, because a lot of people apply to work to get into NYU as it is, and
Sure.
to get into Polanski's class, you could have 700-800 people applying, and he's only taking 200. So he was good at what he did.
Okay, and because Polanski's, a rather odd character himself, with the roads was big. You know what I mean? Rather the Manson family. This guy's had a life himself. What was their relationship? Do you know if they had any kind of relationship besides a student?
Apparently it was just teacher-student, but Polanski was very close with the group that he was teaching, because they were supposed to be the cream of the crop. They were supposed to be the people that were better than the average student and had a not only desire, but they had a keen eye at picking out details in filming and photography. They had something special, something that Polanski thought was better than what the average Joe was. And so he worked closely with them at creating art, as you would say, or film, so he was close with them, but he was close with the whole group. They would do things together as a group and create things. So I'm not saying he picked him out specially. And of course, Roman Polanski's not a person that I could really interview. He's not really interested in speaking about this or anything. It's tough to get an interview with Mr. Polanski.
But you got to admit, that's a pretty odd coincidence for someone like Roman Polanski and all his life experiences to have this kind of relationship with a serial killer. Do we know if him being connected to any other serial killers besides Alcala?
I never had time to look, but that's an interesting thought because Polanski was into young girls too, wasn't he?
Right, yeah.
Yeah, so this fits. And certainly Alcala was the same way. His first girl, I believe she was 8 years. Yeah, she was 8 years old.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, the very first girl. And, if I can talk about, you see, the very first one in 1968, Tally Shapiro. And so he saw her walking on the road, and it was in West Hollywood. And of course, he approached her and said at that time that he knew her parents, and he could give her a ride to school. And that back then in '68, they people were innocent compared to now, and so she just jumped in the car and he took her to his place and he beat her, assaulted her, raped her. Almost killed her. In fact, she would have been if she hadn't been discovered. They thought she was dead when they found her. And on that particular case, what's really interesting was this guy had actually seen her getting into his van and thought it was suspicious and followed them to Rodney's place. And when he saw Rodney take the girl into his apartment, the guy decided to go to a payphone and call the cops. And the cops came out and they came to the door just to check. And when they knocked on the door, of course, he didn't want to let them in. So they forced their way in, and the little girl was, they thought, dead on the floor. And they went to her, and he snuck out the back. He actually got away.
But they must have had his name and address from renting the apartment, though, right?
They did, and they put a warrant out for him. And the girl ended up living, but she was in pretty bad shape. And what happened then was, after she got released from the hospital, the parents decided to move out of the U.S.
Oh, my God.
So they moved out of the country because they were tired of the violence, as they put it. And so when they did catch Rodney and arrested him, and then they tried to prosecute him, they had no witnesses. They couldn't get the girl to come back or any of the parents. So they took a plea on this, and they give him a plea of contributing to minors. And he got 3 years jail, and he only served, I believe it was 10 months on that one, and was released behavior.
No.
Fentanyl. It could be hiding anywhere, including in your house, including in your medicine cabinet, or maybe at a friend's house when you're hanging out, playing games, and get offered a pill. Don't take chances. If a drug didn't come from a pharmacy directly to you, you can find fentanyl using a simple strip you can pick up at your local pharmacy. Don't take it until you test it, because fentanyl can be hiding anywhere. Brought to you by the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Mental Disabilities.
This message comes from Greenlight. Ready to start talking to your kids about financial literacy? Meet Greenlight, the debit card and money app that teaches kids and teens how to earn, save, spend wisely, and invest with your guardrails in place. With Greenlight, you can send money to kids quickly, set up chores, automate allowance, and keep an eye on your kids' spending with real-time notifications. Join millions of parents and kids building healthy financial habits together on Greenlight. Get started risk-free at greenlight.com/audio.
Has anybody ever been in contact with that family? Maybe they were paid off to leave the country?
Yeah, according to the mother, her husband, which was Helly's father, of course, said that he couldn't take the violence in the U.S., and that was the only reason they left. So that's all I could get out of him, and or out of her about him. And it's hard to say. She was mothered by that they moved for a reason. So.
That almost sounds like rent. They couldn't take anything because they were threatened.
Yeah, and I have to tell you, they moved to Mexico. And I just didn't get the thought that, they're moving out of the States because how violent it is, and then they moved to Mexico. And they moved to Mexico City,
Okay. Yeah, there's a lot of crime there, yeah.
Yeah, that's not a city I would choose to get away violence. I didn't buy it.
And I see that this is, what is really, because that was the first murder. But what's really fascinating, too, how Steve Hodel has a connection to this case. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Did you talk to Steve Hodel?
Yeah, actually, yeah. I've talked to him several times. And we talked about this case quite a bit because he was the guy that extradited him from where was it, New York at the time, and brought him back. And he didn't, and with Steve thought that this guy was crazy because when he was taking him back, and he was asking him questions, Rodney would go, I don't want to talk about that guy, like as if Rodney himself was someone different. And there was something crazy there because what he did was when he went to New York, he changed his name.
Oh, really?
He changed it to John Berger, I believe it was, and was living for a while. Then he changed it a little bit again to John Berger, and he got a job. He got a job in an all-girls school as a counselor.
With what kind of credentials?
None. He had a degree in arts from L.A., and he was studied with Polanski, but he couldn't use that because he changed his name. And so he gets a job at this all-girls school, and he's the counselor. And he was doing that for, I think, about 2 years almost. And what happened was it was just an accident. Two of the girls went from the camp to a post office because they had to mail some letters. And that was the old days when they had a post office. And in the post office, they had the top 10 most wanted.
Oh, my God.
He was number 10. And they thought, geez, that's our counselor, John. Can't be him. And so when they went back to camp, they told their camp leader, and the camp leader thought, no, this is crazy. And so he went to the post office and looked over the picture and decided, well, he'll call the FBI tip line and tell them that this John Counselor guy looks a lot like him, but doesn't think it is. And it ended up being him. So they came out and arrested him. And that's when they got Steve Hodel, who was from L.A., a detective, and flew him out there to bring him back to L.A. to stand trial.
Do we know the name of the old girls' school?
Oh, I do, but not off the top of my head. It's something about angels.
Okay. Because it's
not on the. I know. I have it in the book, and I did discover the name and the girls and the counselor that called the FBI, and the dean as well. But I'm trying to remember the name. It had quite a unique name. It was in New Hampshire as well. I remember that.
Okay. Because it's interesting, because when you think of Jeffrey Epstein, he worked in an all-girls school, a private school, and so did John Mark Carr, the guy who confessed to the John Benet Ramsey murder. He worked at a school too, you know.
I guess this is what you do.
Yeah.
I mean, in a way, we laugh, but if you think about this, if you really think about this for a second, the best way to hide is really amongst a place you wouldn't expect. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, the last place you're going to look is a girls' school. Right? You wouldn't think that's where someone's going to go. I mean, I guess that's it. I don't know if that's the thing. Who knows if this Rodney thought about that consciously, kind of thought, oh, this is where I'm going to go and work and hide.
Or the compulsion is so great. The compulsion is so great they can't control it. And they figure, well, I'm going to get arrested anyway. I might as well go down with a bang, you know?
Yeah.
And do we know about, by the way, too, I was just interviewing the guy, Nathan Forrest Winters, the little boy in Clown House that was molested by Victor Salva. And Victor Salva, he tells us, Victor Salva worked at daycare centers and stuff. That's how we met him. So just fascinating.
Yeah. Now, you know, and I have to say, and this is everywhere, because just up in Canada in the East where they had Paul Bernardo and Carla Homolka, that couple that murdered her sister and all these others, and they filmed it. And he got put away for life, and she turned evidence on him. So she got like 5-6 years. She got out of prison, and they just found her earlier this year. She was a counselor at a school for elementary children.
Right. I think she was volunteering there too.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, is that crazy?
Yeah.
What do you do with your? I just thought this is crazy. But she could do this as much as she wants because they changed their name, and if you don't recognize them, they get a job. And we got to start checking our schools.
The thing is, there's limitations to these background reports.
Yeah,
these criminal records checks. The NCIC, the Nationwide Federal Background, is only 25% accurate, because only 25% of that information there is accurate. Because when you get arrested, you give a different date of birth, you give your social security number a little bit wrong, they spell your name a little bit wrong. Most of these people are drunk when they get arrested, the guys, and there's multiple typing in the information, so there's all these errors in this information. It's rife with errors, and there's really no way to improve it. We've got it all pretty much as best as we can get it. Unless we give everybody a tattoo or something, or a chip, which is pretty much it,
Oh, don't say that. Alex Jones will be on you.
That's right, with the gay frogs.
Yeah, that's right. He'll be in trouble. So this guy was hiding in the school, and the weird thing is, like I said, it was August 1971 when he actually was getting extradited by Steve Hodel, and remember the crime was in 1968, right. So it was a good 3 years later he was free, and they took him back, and that's what I said. So he would say to Rodney, ask him questions, and Rodney would answer and say, "Well, I don't want to talk about things that Rodney Alcala did," like as if it was a third person. And Steve said, so it was really, really weird. He would talk about Rodney as a different person. He wasn't him. He was someone different, and he really acted like that's how it was in his mind. It's a different human being. And that was weird. So yeah, he actually just got 34 months for that.
And do we know about any suspicious behavior around these little girls at the school?
Well, very little, but he was smart enough that during this time when he was the counselor at school, he would go into New York and kill girls.
Oh my God.
And we know of at least 2, and we didn't know this at the time. This was discovered just here in 2010 when they got DNA hits, and it matched him on 2 different girls in New York, and they went missing and were murdered. And they were found raped and murdered at the same time he was in this counselor school in New Hampshire. So he would actually take time to leave the school, to go to New York, pick a girl, rape and kill her, and then come back to work as a counselor. So he knew not to do any of the details in a school. It's just a weird scenario.
Now these girls who was picking up in New York, how old were they? Were they little kids too?
Well, actually, one was 23, so not super young, but the other one was 17. And but majority of the girls, of the 32 that he was eventually convicted of, most of them were probably around 13 to 15. That was pretty much the average age on most of the girls. And even the ones that got away, we had two girls that got away, and they were both 14 and 15.
You know how you said that when Hodel was driving him back, that he had like a disassociation with himself, right? You know how that's caused sometimes by kids are molested, and then they have that disassociation disorder? You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. Do you think that that's possible? He had some kind of a trauma in his life?
Well, and I was trying to find that. I really like to give, this is terrible, don't give me bad emails, but I like to give a person like this the benefit of the doubt to try and find out how this happened. And it's not that I want to see the person out, I get comments once in a while. I don't want to see them out of jail. They got to be put away or all that. But we need to figure out what goes wrong with people. We need to spend more time, I think, anyway. So I really tried to figure this out. And his father and brothers everybody seemed normal. There's no problems as far as abuse. So to see that a teacher or somebody that we haven't come across yet, maybe he was hanging with Kevin Spacey.
But he was hanging out with the...
party. I don't know where it came from, because I really didn't get that feeling in the family. And he seemed to manage his life pretty good. So I'm trying to think, well, where could this outside influence have come in to do things to him? And maybe there was a counselor, maybe there was a family friend or something.
What about a cult? Any kind of occult connections with Alcala?
No, not at all. He was really big on, he was a real American patriot. He was joined the forces there when he first got out of school. He was really, he loved America. He was a true red, white, and blue, and I see no cult activity. And in fact, he was opposite of what was going on, in the late 60s, when people are into the, peace, love, and tune in, turn on, drop out, and all that stuff. He wasn't that character. He wasn't the guy that was going to parties and smoking pot and doing the whole scene. He was actually in school all the time. He went to the forces. He just did all of the true blue things to do. So no cult activity.
It's a good time to take a break. Take a little commercial break. We're here with Alan Warren, and we're talking about his new book, Killing Game, the true story of Rodney Alcala, the game show killer. That's fascinating. And now a word from our sponsors.
Have you ever thought about opening your own mobile cart or kiosk business? Maybe the facility you manage could establish new revenue by adding coffee, food, or retail services. Cart King International can be the answer to your needs. Cart King is a North American designer and manufacturer of the finest mobile coffee, food, and retail carts and kiosks. Cart King has been working with clients and corporations across North America for 20 years, providing innovative designs, custom manufacturing, and timely delivery. Carts and kiosks are fun, and so are the dozens of designs on our website. Please visit us today at www.cart-king.com or just call us at 1-877-986-7771 and get your sales rolling.
Hey, you, podcast listener. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. Take the blue pill. You wake up in your bed and go back to listening to mundane podcasts that won't challenge your religious beliefs and your so-called truths about reality, the universe, and consciousness. Take the red pill. Subscribe to the Event Horizon podcast, hosted by Mark Anthony Peterson, and he will show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. Event Horizon takes a walk into the paranormal with a splash of conspiracy. It's the podcast that would be born if David Icke and the X-Files had a baby. Subscribe to the Event Horizon podcast by Mark Anthony Peterson on Spreaker, iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, CastBox, Stitcher, or any of your other favorite podcast platforms. Remember, all we are offering is the truth, nothing more.
It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome back to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. We're here with Alan Warren as a radio host and a true crime author. The latest book is Killing Game, the true story of Rodney Alcala, the game show killer. Now, Alan, right before we left, you said how there was no connection with the occult, and you mentioned a couple of times that he was a patriot and that he served in the military. What branch of the military did he serve?
He was in the Army. He got in the Army, and he went through basic training, and I think he had two years with them. Yeah.
And do you know what kind of duties he had in the Army? Did he see in combat?
No combat. What had happened was, this was kind of the first sign of any sort of problem. What he did was he got sent to a base back east, and during the training, I think it was just in his second year, his father had died. And so he flew home for the funeral and then came back, and within a couple of weeks, he went AWOL. And he just showed up at his mother's house and said that he left. And so she told him to turn himself in, and he did. And they actually decided, like they said, the last 2 weeks, he was unable to perform his jobs properly. And so they dismissed him from the U.S. Army. Yeah, it was North Carolina, and he was going to be a paratrooper, was what he was trying to do. And so I'm not sure if it was the father's death or what happened, but that's when they decided to dismiss him. But what they did do was they tested him, and he was diagnosed at that time with an antisocial personality disorder by the military. So that was the first sign of any sort of mental issues.
Now, was there a reason for this test?
Fentanyl. It could be hiding anywhere, including in your house, including in your medicine cabinet, or maybe at a friend's house when you're hanging out, playing games, and get offered a pill. Don't take chances. If a drug didn't come from a pharmacy directly to you, you can find fentanyl using a simple strip you can pick up at your local pharmacy. Don't take it until you test it, because fentanyl can be hiding anywhere. Brought to you by the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Mental Disabilities.
Or is this testing they did on everybody?
Well, they did a specific reason was because he was not doing. He worked as a clerk in the military base, and he was just not performing very well. He used to be. They said he was really efficient and very good at what he did for the first year, but then all of a sudden he just started not doing a very good job. And then he went AWOL. And so his mother turned him in. And so they did an investigation, and I guess they just run a report like that. They just have to see the military psychiatrist. And that's what they came up with, and they give him a discharge.
Was he doing murder? What year was this? Was he doing murders before this or started after?
He had done some murder. This was in the very late 60s as well. So he must have attacked 2 people by the time he was in. And so it was near the beginning of it.
But he didn't have those charges. So those charges came afterwards, is that right?
Yeah, there were charges that came afterwards.
Okay.
So he wasn't known to have done it. But now that we know, looking back, we know more people that he's attacked and raped and stuff now that they didn't know at the time.
Now, these other ones you described, the 23-year-old and the 17-year-old, were these like crimes of opportunity, or was he stalking them out?
Well, on the 23-year-old, he pursued her specifically because he got to know her. He met her in New York on the street, and they struck up a conversation. She was really into photography as well and art, and so then he set up a date, and then he attacked her. The other one we don't know. We really don't. She was a girl that just went missing. She was 15, and all of a sudden she was gone. And they found her body 6 months later, and they actually put it as a cold case. We didn't know anything about it. And then afterwards, they kept the swab and the DNA and all that stuff, and they tied it to him and charged him for it in 2008. So all we know is she was missing. She was found in a dumpster behind a apartment building, and that was a cold case.
It's amazing. So much of this is recent, the 2010, 2008.
He was crazy. He was doing 2 at a time. He had the luck. I can't believe how much he got away with. It was just unbelievable. He would just do things for instance, in 1975. So this is after he's been to prison for a year for the first girl that we knew he molested and almost killed in his apartment. And all the army's done, and he's back home. And he would go to the shopping mall. So he started with, he went to the shopping mall and picked up a girl that was 13. And would tell her that he was doing pictures for a contest, and she could win. And so he'd take her to the park. So he goes to the park and starts taking pictures of her. And then, of course, one thing leads to another, and he starts attacking her. And even with this particular girl, her name was Julie Johnson. A park ranger saw him at the top of a hill on a trail with her, and he was forcing himself on her. And so the park ranger came up to them and stopped them. And he turned around and said, "Oh, sorry, we were smoking a joint and we got out of hand." And then the girl screamed, Julie Johnson screamed that she had been forced to go there and wanted to go. So they take them both in cuffs, take the police station, and they let them go.
How this be? Prior to parole type of situation.
So they said the response was that they didn't believe the girl. They said that there's several times they'd been up to the park and caught girls, older men, would also be men of kidnapping them or forcing them to go there.
Okay.
And most of the time it wasn't. So they just thought she's just another girl out for a good thing, whatever. What is she doing? So they actually let him go. It just seemed like whatever he did, he would just get away with it.
Well, if you look at this Roy Moore story down there in Alabama, it's the same girls at the mall and getting away with it for years.
Exactly. And the thing is, in try to protect that behavior. They like a person that's doing or that's in it, like Roar, in a certain position, and they just don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, yeah.
Yeah. And what about what do you call it? Did he have a parole after his 70 charges?
Yeah, he was on parole, and later that actually and he caught with that 13 girl. They did after all, but they couldn't do anything. It was one after another. And
wait a second, the parole found out that this is the park ran the girl.
Yeah, in fact, if you want to hear something even more, they even went further. The parole officer would let him take vacation to New York. He's not supposed to go to his mother's house. He's not supposed to, go to bars. He's not supposed to do all that. He asked to go to New York, and the parole officer would let him go. And every time he let him go, and a girl was missing in New York.
And the parole officer would know that this guy, even though his charges, were reduced to delinquency of a minor, the parole officer knows that this guy raped an 8-year-old.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it was crazy. That he's found in the park with another one. Goes to New York because, the parole officer said, sure. Goes to Manhattan, and he kills a girl named Ellen Jane Hover. She was 23. She was the daughter of an owner of Ciro's, which was a big Hollywood nightclub.
Sure.
And she was also the goddaughter of Dean Martin.
Wow.
And her remains were found on the Rockefeller estate in Westchester County. So he was getting away, and this is just scratching the surface. This was so complicated. When I was going through this, I've never had a book like this where I actually had to start naming the chapters with the person that he killed and in what city and what year, because it was so confusing. I had 32 of them that I had to go through, and that's just the ones that he actually got convicted of. There's tons that he got away with, and also tons that he approached, and they ran away from him. It would have been so confusing to try and list out. And I have to say, even to this day, right, the New York Police Department and the FBI has a page on him. There's over 215 photos on their website under Rodney Alcala that they want to identify the people in the photos because they think there's a lot more.
Right, because they found him with a bunch of pictures of young girls, and we don't know who those girls are.
Exactly. And not only girls, boys too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and a lot of them, they're all underage, and most of them are naked or close to it, and he's had them positioned into sexual positions. It's not just like a normal photo. There are, of course, some, and they've tried to just doctor it so you see the face. But on so many of these photos, he's put them in a position of something that's not normal, and taken pictures. And that was found in his locker in Seattle.
Oh, he's another one in Seattle. Oh, bro. Yeah. Okay, let me ask you. That's interesting. Let me ask you this, though. Now, you mentioned before that the one of these victims is Ellen Jane. What was her last name?
Hover. Hover.
Yeah. Ellen Jane Hover was found on the Rockefeller estate. How did the body get on the Rockefeller estate?
You know what? There's another one. It's one of those things where, how did this happen, right? She lived in an apartment on 3rd Avenue in Manhattan, and close to the Empire State Building. And how did she end up on the Rockefeller estate? That's what I mean. It's crazy. He would take them to a park or a place like that where there's huge grounds, and he would say he's taking pictures, right, and that he's professional and all this stuff, and that's where he would start them at. And then he would end up killing them and then leaving the body, I guess, somewhere so that's what he did here. See, this is another one that we didn't know that he did this until we got the DNA years and years later. And they keep they were getting 5-6 hits every 6 months on him with girls that he had raped throughout the 70s. It was crazy.
What was the manner of murder? How did he kill this Hoover girl? Strangulation?
Well, she was strangled. She was strangled. It seemed like most of them, he was the guy that would go up and say, well, he's charming. He'd take their photos. A lot of them, he would roll a joint for them too, which was a popular thing. And they'd get a little loosened and they'd go to a place with him, and then he would kill them. And most of them he strangled. There was very few others. In fact, I think 2 of them were stabbed, but all of them were they were all strangled.
And this girl on the Rockefeller estate, and these other parts, he's raping them out there in the public, in the open?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's why he even got caught in that park in California by the ranger. And then the ranger let him go, thinking, it was just they bought his story every time. So he was doing it all in public. In fact, one of his biggest places was Huntington Beach. He would go down there with his camera and go up to girls and take pictures and do that whole scenario. And some would go and some wouldn't. And he always had the same little scenario. Oh, you could win. How about giving me your phone number? And we'll call you if you win. Or, come to my place. I've got some more equipment there, and we can take some even better shots. And they would go. And then he would choke them. He would take pictures, rape them, and then kill them.
That's always such a creepy move, those photographers, like you meet those creepy guys. Hey, oh, yeah, I'm a photographer too, and then a lot of times.
Yeah, it's that smile. It's like, anybody ever tell you I could take a good picture of you? Yeah, and this Helen Hoover, her family, of course, was well-to-do. They even hired a private investigator to try and find out what happened, and they put $100,000 reward on their daughter, and that was a lot of money back then. Holy cow! In 1975, wow.
Who was the PI? Do we know?
Sorry, who was
the investigator? Do we know?
I did get his name, but I don't have it here. But he was someone pretty big, because it was actually who hired him was Sammy Davis Jr. for Dean Martin. He had something to do with the family that way,
right? And
Cyril. So they were all. So he would have been a pretty significant investigator. And, it's just crazy how he could get away with this sort of stuff.
And that's right around the same time, too, in New York, around 75, 76, the Son of Sam murders were going on with that cult, the Process Church and the children, and all that.
Exactly.
Yeah, all that group around it. And then you got, who's paying for the PI? Sammy Davis Jr., who's connected to who? Anton LaVey in the Church of Satan. What?
Well, that's it. This was, the Son of Sam was going wild, right, because that was April of 77 when he shot that couple, and then it started. But I think that's where the attention went, because in New York, they put 200 cops on that case.
Right.
And everybody was focused on that. And also when I look through, the city of New York had 17,000 reported missing persons in 1977. 17,000. And if you got 200 cops just on the Son of Sam, that's why they had to go to a PI and pay and put a big reward, because they were being ignored,
right?
And not necessarily intentionally. It was just that that they just couldn't afford the manpower.
And her parents owned Cirque, you said. Oh, what restaurant was it?
Ciro's.
Ciro's, right.
Yeah.
Right, okay, yeah. See, Ciro's is a big place, too, yeah. And, of course, Dean Martin got a lot of organized crime connections, too. His own son died, too, as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, and when they found her on the Rockefeller Estates, too, right?
Yeah.
She was found by a girl. And the thing is, when the police went there and all the photos of her, so Alcala had actually strangled her, raped her, and stripped her. And then he took all these photos and he posed her in a specific, in an exact place where whoever would find her would see her. How do I say this nicely? He would put her feet up to her buttocks, spread her legs wide open, and face that in a position where that would be the first thing you see. And he did that with quite a few of them. And, it was kind of weird. And the detective was Donald Tass on that in New York that went. And it was just crazy. He almost did this on purpose. He wanted them to find them in this certain place.
It's similar to the Arliss Perry positioning of the body and stuff, and even Black Dahlia.
Exactly. Exactly. It was just very, very similar. And isn't that a coincidence? You got Steve Hodel on the case, who thinks, his father or grandfather was killer at Black Dahlia. And then, but this was all going on, and he just kept on. He never stopped. He just kept on killing these girls. Jill Barcombe was the next one that we know of. And, God, what was she? And that was in New York too. So that was another one. Let me interrupt you
for a second. Did you get a chance to talk to Detective Jim Rothstein about any of this?
No, I never got a chance to talk to him about it.
I just had him on the show last week. I would have loved if I would have known this was going on with him, because he had his hand in everything around his time. I would have loved to ask him about this.
Oh yeah, it's so interesting to talk to like Hodel, and Camacho was another detective that arrested him, and it's so interesting to hear them, because this guy just had the luck of the Irish, man. I cannot tell you how many he got away with that he would be in custody or even caught or even suspected, and he just kept getting away with it. Kept on murdering more and more.
And any suspicions of help or accomplices?
No, that's what I would always ask. It was like, well, how could...
Fentanyl. It could be hiding anywhere, including in your house, including in your medicine cabinet, or maybe at a friend's house when you're hanging out, playing games, and get offered a pill. Don't take chances. If a drug didn't come from a pharmacy directly to you, you can find fentanyl using a simple strip you can pick up at your local pharmacy. Don't take it until you test it, because fentanyl can be hiding anywhere. Brought to you by the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Mental Disabilities.
He'd be doing all this, but when you really look at it, he would just go out. He had his favorite spots, the mall, the beach, and do the same line, the same thing over and over again. And girls would go with him. It was endless. It seemed like, all he had to do was go out and ask 10 different girls. Half of them would say yes. And that's all he needed, And they were all very young. Like this next one I was saying, she was 11. Oh. It's not like they could fight him off,
Right.
And he would always take them to his place. And so once they're in the basement, then he could do what he wanted. And like I said, it's not like they could fight it off because they're so young. And it was over. And he would take the body and place them in a place, like I said, and it would be in a position that would be very weird. And he just would keep doing it.
So he had a house with a basement and like it's like a photography studio down the basement?
It was his mother's house.
Oh, brother.
Yeah. And it was really shocking. And then there's the other girl in New York too, because he would keep going to New York. The parole officer would let him. He picked up another one. She was a candy striper at a hospital, and same thing. It was, you could almost say it's the same scenario. But now this one, I have to tell you, this one he left on, he took in California on Mulholland Drive, right by Marlon Brando's house.
There's a Brando connection to Polanski,
Yeah,
Yeah.
and faced her body to it. And in fact, the police had to come out and question and say, what, there's a little park there called California Chaparral, and it's right at Marlon Brando's. So he would put the body in there amongst the trees, and the same thing, knees bent. Tips of her toes would be, in under her buttocks, and then she would, thighs were wide open and point toward Marlon, and no panties, of course, none of that stuff. So he had this thing that he had to do, and
you said the cops actually questioned Brando?
Yeah, actually, because it was right facing his house and right there. And actually they spent a couple of days there. And you want to, and this particular case, this is really interesting.
Well, Brando's house is walking distance to Jack Nicholson's house, where Polanski raped that little girl.
Yeah. And guess who the LAPD detective was that was on this case?
Don't tell me Hodel.
No, Philip Van Adder.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know what? He pops up a lot of places too, man.
Yeah. Like it's not, you keep going and it's just, you can't write stuff like this.
He pops up in a Manson case too. Manson and also the 4 on the floor murders. He was in all those cases. We got to take
exactly.
Yeah, right. We're going to round up all these guys and bring them in for questioning, you and me.
Just on an island.
Yeah, right.
It's just too crazy. I could not believe how many people I knew was going through this. And that's why every time I was writing, I had to go back and change the chapter to kind of go, this is just crazy, because there's another one. There's another one. Yeah. There's another one. And people, you keep on. I've never had a book before that I was writing that I could just text the person that I'm talking about on so many cases, or email them because I'd talked to them before, or I knew them, or who they are, right?
You know what? We got to take a break right now, but we'll be talking about that too, because I know you just talked to F. Lee Bailey. I'd love to get a hold of him. But we're here with, we're going to take a commercial break. We're here with Alan Warren, radio host. We're talking about his new book, Killing Game, which sounds like the who's who of everything. Killing Game, the true story of Rodney Alcala, the game show killer. And you can find Alan Warren got a show just like this. He pretty much a show just like this. He's talking right now about these kind of stories. He has a guest we have pretty much on Friday nights. You said at what is that station again?
KW is 11:50 a.m.
KKNW 11:50 a.m. We'll be right back after these minutes.
Fentanyl. It could be hiding anywhere, including in your house, including in your medicine cabinet, or maybe at a friend's house when you're hanging out, playing games, and get offered a pill. Don't take chances. If a drug didn't come from a pharmacy directly to you, you can find fentanyl using a simple strip you can pick up at your local pharmacy. Don't take it until you test it, because fentanyl can be hiding anywhere. Brought to you by the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Mental Disabilities. Fentanyl. It could be hiding anywhere, including in your house, including in your medicine cabinet, or maybe at a friend's house when you're hanging out, playing games, and get offered a pill. Don't take chances. If a drug didn't come from a pharmacy directly to you, you can find fentanyl using a simple strip you can pick up at your local pharmacy. Don't take it until you test it, because fentanyl can be hiding anywhere. Brought to you by the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Mental Disabilities. Fentanyl. It could be hiding anywhere, including in your house, including in your medicine cabinet, or maybe at a friend's house when you're hanging out, playing games, and get offered a pill. Don't take chances. If a drug didn't come from a pharmacy directly to you, you can find fentanyl using a simple strip you can pick up at your local pharmacy. Don't take it until you test it, because fentanyl can be hiding anywhere. Brought to you by the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Mental Disabilities. Fentanyl. It could be hiding anywhere, including in your house, including in your medicine cabinet, or maybe at a friend's house when you're hanging out, playing games, and get offered a pill. Don't take chances. If a drug didn't come from a pharmacy directly to you, you can find fentanyl using a simple strip you can pick up at your local pharmacy. Don't take it until you test it, because fentanyl can be hiding anywhere. Brought to you by the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Mental Disabilities.